and welcome to Fika for Life. Welcome back, guys. My name is Lin Yuan, and my co-host is
Edward Thomas.
Edward Lamar the Third Thomas.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I am the king of Sweden.
Kinda. Well, today we are meeting up, and we want to talk about a very current event issue, isn't it? Or it came up more in the media now.
Well, first we want to talk about Lynn brought fika today.
Oh yeah, it's Fika for Life.
So she brought these banana cookies, which were less sugar than normal ones.
And Ed was looking very disappointed.
And I was like really upset because I thought that Lynn really loved me and we were really close, like brother and sister. And then she brings me,
and I don't want him to die.
Yeah, so she brings me, and it says less sugar, and I was just like,
could you taste the difference though?
Yeah. Like there's no sugar. There's no sugar things on my crystals on my teeth or anything.
Sure, I can go in and get you some.
Oh really?
Some sugar to just pour
it in. So if you can take the cookie and dip it in sugar, then it would be a lot better.
Yeah.
It actually tasted pretty good. It tasted like, I mean, you could taste the banana flavor and stuff like that, and it's probably good for kids and healthier and stuff like that. So
but for adults, it's
I guess,
totally rubbish.
Out of 5 thumbs, I'll give it a 3.
Well, that's pass in Sweden. So
is that, 1 is passing.
Yeah. So that's fine.
Sweden's like, but you can still graduate high school with an F. Like
really? Can you?
Yeah, in Sweden you can.
Wow.
You can have like all Fs and still graduate.
You just don't
because you went to high school. I'm like,
really?
In America, you would call that failing, and you would have to go through high school again.
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't get done until you actually have a grade.
Well, the grade, they have a grade. They have a grade. Yeah.
But, Fs usually mean no points. So you have a 0. What's your grade point average? 0.00.
Wow. Okay, let's get back to to what matters.
Okay, well, let's talk about that.
It's the hashtag Black Lives Matter.
Yes.
So how are we qualified to talk about that?
Well, because
I'm a racist and you're black.
Yeah, she's joking, people.
I'm not a racist.
Except that she does have a flag from the South in her bedroom that she sleeps under.
In the Swedish South, I could have Skåne.
Oh, in Sweden. I mean, you never know here because they hide.
But the weird thing is, the South always seems to be more racist, also in Germany.
Really?
And also in Sweden. I mean, all the racists come from Skåne.
That's so weird. Precis, Karlskrona. Well, that's kind of really weird. Why would the southern parts of the country?
Because the sun has burned their brains.
Is that what it is? Sunstroke. That's right. Your brain fried. Well, so you guys may not know this, but I happen to be African American.
Could hear it, definitely.
You cannot hear it.
I'm just joking.
Okay, you might be able to hear it. I don't know. What's up? No. And so, and even though we're kind of joking around, this is actually not a very... the topic is not because we're trying to make light of it. This is just the normal way that we talk about serious things. So
if you have listened to our podcast before, you probably know that we also joke about death. So
yeah,
it's our way of coping
your
with
mama.
It. Your mama is so
no. So, but I think that that being African American and then living in Sweden and being a minority in 2 different cultures gives me a perspective that's maybe a little different. At the same time, I'm kind of far removed from what's happening in the States because it's not my everyday reality anymore. But it's probably still something that bothers me and something that I can relate to, and it's something that makes me really angry. But then it's also because my youngest son and my oldest daughter are living there, as well as my brother and his kids and stuff like that. Then it becomes more personal just because those things that could happen in the States could happen to them.
True. I mean, I'm also a member of the minority groups in both Germany and in Sweden. I probably will be my whole life. So I've been a first-generation immigrant and then a second-generation immigrant. So, but I have a different perspective on being an immigrant because I think being Asian, you can also experience a lot of racism, but I think, I don't know if it goes that far back.
I mean,
Like-
in some ways it does. I mean, if you think about, if we look at the States at least, so that when
But they didn't import Chinese people to.
yeah, they did.
How many then?
Yeah, a lot.
But they
So-
didn't reproduce that much.
No, but they allowed Chinese people to come to the West Coast to help to build the railroad, and then they were forbidden from owning land.
Oh,
So the
nice.
reason that there were so many Chinese laundries and Chinese restaurants, because that was what they could do, because they were forbidden from doing other kinds of work. You had a lot of black people, mostly ex-slaves, who worked on the railroads, but they usually got not paid, or they were still
Poorly
treated like
paid,
they were
yeah.
still treated like slaves. So it was really bad. So the railroads are. I mean, that was one of the things that that a lot of people were brought into the West Coast part, and then we ended up with a large Chinese community and a large Japanese community in America. And it wasn't until the end of the Vietnam War that we ended up with like people from Cambodia and Vietnam.
Yeah.
So that came later on. So that was like the Chinese and Japanese communities were
First.
well established, and then the Korean community was established, and then the rest of Southeast Asia was like brought
After,
in
yeah.
after that, which was probably harder for them, because I think it was. So I think like being a black person growing up within an Asian American community, it gives me this weird perspective. I'm ruined for life.
So you didn't grow up in an all-white community, and you didn't grow up in an
No.
all-black community
No.
either.
No, I tried. They kicked me out.
You were not black enough for them.
Yeah. Well, it was really weird because, like, so a lot of black kids at school would call me Oreo because they thought I wasn't black enough, and then a lot of the white kids were like, "Oh, you're so ghetto." I'm like, "What, me?" And so the only kids who thought I was cool were Asian kids because I was taller than they were. So when we would play basketball, I was so much taller, so I could.
Wow, that's sad.
It's really like, yes. So I started hanging out with Asians because they were shorter than me. And it made me feel tall. I felt like a giant. But I think that, I think like if I'm looking back, I mean, there's things that were both good about that, and there's things that are sad about that, you know, at the same time. Or that all my children, at least the first 3 children, are all half Asian. And so they have both the things that go with African Americans, they have the things that go with Asians, and especially for my oldest daughter Jessica, it hasn't been very easy for her, where people are like, "You're not really black," or "You're not really Asian," or "You're not Asian enough."
But that's strange, because a lot of racists claim that you are black if you have just 1 ounce of black
well, black something.
blood, yeah, or
Somewhere.
your great father was
Yeah.
black or something like that,
Yeah.
which is strange.
Yeah, I mean, and it works out kind of weird like that. That depending upon who you're talking with in that situation, that it could be like you don't get a break anywhere, you know. And so I think that's
For being black, you mean?
yeah, or just I mean, both you and I have kids who are of mixed races and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was a great
So-
decision.
I know, really. What were you thinking? Oh, she's so cute. No, no, but I think that would be like, I know that the identity thing can be a problem.
Yeah, yeah,
Because where do
definitely.
you fit in at? You know, you're
You're not
like,
this, you're not that.
Yeah,
And
like you're Asian but not Asian. You're black, you're not black, or in your case, Swedish and not Swedish.
Mm.
And so where, as a kid, like, where do you get your identity from? What's the thing that really identifies you? Because your whole life is multicultural.
And you want to be like your friends, so depending on who you hang out with, you want to be either, in Nomi's case, maybe Swedish or German or Vietnamese, depending on the majority of her friends.
Exactly.
So when I grew up, I always wanted to be German, but that ain't happening.
And I always thought of you as a real German. I didn't know you were Vietnamese. I was like, aha.
So you mean the black eyes and the eyes did not point you in any direction?
No, I never see stuff like that. No, but I think that
Do you feel that it's a blessing that you are living in Sweden now, or would you rather be in the States now? What?
or China.
Maybe not China.
No, I don't. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a hard question.
No, but I'm stuck in this video and these people in Yunnan province, and they eat such good food and it's so spicy. I'm just like, wow. All right. I think that's all. I don't even know if I can answer that question. I think that's why I joke so much is because I don't think I want to live in the States right now.
No.
And I think that I think it's too fearful. I mean, I've grown up with a fear of the police because I kept getting harassed by the police just because I was often the only black person in a certain area. So whether it was when I was working in Laguna Beach and I had just bought a car, but because I was a black person coming from Laguna Beach, which is a kind of really rich area.
How could you have a car?
So the police would stop me like every single night after work.
Wow.
And ask for my registration.
Weren't they the same officers?
Yeah. They would like follow after me in the car, waiting to see if I would speed, waiting to see if there's something wrong with the car.
But that's just harassment because they knew.
And they would put the light on and he was like, I remember one day he said,
"Hey, Ed,
so let me see your registration and let me see your license." I'm like, "You just asked me yesterday. Don't get smart with me." And he puts his hand on his gun. And at that point, I know that like my life is in danger.
But that's so crazy because I think, especially for me, like, firstly, I don't live in the States. Secondly, I don't think I knew so much about the black community or how black people live in the U.S. because I think also this outrage is for many people that they never realized that black people were treated differently than
like it's so weird though
than any other.
Like
but I
all
mean,
the movies and Django.
Roots. But I don't know if I get all my culture education from movies. I'm not sure about that. And I think most black people in Sweden I've met, they are actually Africans. Yeah. They are not African American or African British or African Australian or. Were raised in a different setting where they were subject to those treatments. So I think it's so crazy when I hear about it, I'm like, how is this possible? I feel like how can people treat other people like that? Because that's like just bullying. The only equivalent I have in my brain is like kids bullying each other. Well, I mean, but they are adults.
Yeah, I mean, so during the Vietnam War, so America you were forced to have to go to the draft, and black people were drafted in greater numbers than white people.
Weird.
And so a lot of black people were like, well, why should I be fighting this war? I don't have anything against Vietnamese people.
Yeah, it's not my problem.
Sweden allowed black people to defect. So there was a large group of African Americans living in Sweden. And then when I think it was President Carter had an amnesty, and so if you had defected, you can come back to America
without consequences.
Without going to jail. And so almost all the African Americans left Sweden.
Okay.
Which I would really. So if you're listening to this and you're African American
who left Sweden,
I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to figure out what made you leave Sweden.
Yeah.
And go back to the States after being here for so long.
Okay, but what do you mean by so long? What time period are we talking about?
So they were probably here from the 60s until the 80s.
Yeah, the end of the Vietnam War.
Maybe 15 to 20 years.
Woo.
So that's kind of a long time. So that's one thing that I was thinking about. But it's true. There aren't that many African Americans living in Sweden.
Yeah. Not so many in Germany either, where I grew up.
Really? Because I would think that because there's a base in Germany.
Yeah, but the base is in Western Germany, and I grew up in Eastern Germany.
You grew up in the communist part of Germany.
I grew up in the now racist East. So
oh wow!
I'm the only black people probably from Somalia.
Wow! Oh well. Yeah, so I think that, and here in Sweden, so like you never really learn about slavery. So most Swedes don't know that the Swedish government tried to start a colony in Africa and then failed. And then they tried to get into the slave thing because they wanted to make money like all the other countries. So they end up with St. Bartholomew that they got from the French. And then Swedes did what are called the equivalation, where they would say, this slave is worth this much rum, this much chocolate, this much coffee.
Whoa.
So like a very typical Swedish thing would be, well, okay, we're not gonna really get our hands dirty, but we'll be in the middle part of it.
Well, that's always historically that's what Sweden does. I feel
And so, and because of that, and so the Archbishop of Sweden, that would be the last 2 archbishops ago, apologized to the Sami people are like in Sweden, like the Native Americans were in America, and treated just as badly. So he apologized. So the Church of Sweden made a formal apology to the Sami people for all the atrocities that the Church of Sweden and the Swedish government has enacted upon them. And yet and still, the Church of Sweden and the Swedish crown have never, ever apologized for their part in the slave trade.
Well,
So-
for that, they have to acknowledge it.
There you go. So it's one of the things that as we're talking about Black Lives Matters, that really angers me in Sweden. First is the fact that we're very few people working in the Church of Sweden
Of color.
Of color.
Any color.
Yeah, it's mostly white people. To tell the truth. And I mean, there's not even a candidate. So if you think about since the year 2000, the Church of Sweden has been separated from the government.
That's really
And
late.
and there's not even a candidate to be bishop of any color.
Any
That's
color,
only
except for
white people. Only white people. And that's kind of
strange.
That's kind of strange, and it's kind of
because
sad.
because in politics you have a lot of people of color, different colors.
Yeah, like Sweden, when politics side it's gone really good. I mean, it's
One of the party leaders, I forgot her name, but she was also black. Yeah, something with N, something. Yeah, but she is of color, for example.
I don't like her, but
We're not talking about the politics. We're
it's
just
good
about
to see someone there. You know,
we just
color.
talk about diversity.
Yeah. I mean, she's a party leader, so and
And a woman.
Yeah.
A woman of color.
A woman of color in Sweden.
So you see, politics is
Doesn't
more
happen that
diverse
often.
than the church, which is sad.
Unfortunately, it is. I mean, I think that in our diocese, for the majority of the years that I've been working in the diocese, I've been the only black priest.
Really?
In Sweden is 20. So you have to understand, those of you guys who are listening who don't live in Sweden, Sweden is about 20% immigrant. So that, and the church is not even 1%. And this is not just the Church of Sweden. This is Swedish
All
Christianity, all churches.
Free churches.
There's hardly any people of color in any
leadership.
position of leadership or decision making.
Except it's the African church.
Yeah. If you're an immigrant church, so that my friend, she's the pastor of the Iranian church in Stockholm, and it's all Iranians, and so there's a lot of Iranians in leadership because they all speak
Just Iranians.
Farsi and stuff, and it's Iranians. but she would never be as easily accepted as a leader within a Swedish congregation. So,
But don't you think that Swedes would now disagree? They're like, no, that's...
Look at their own statistics. If they disagree, it's because they're stupid. Yes, right. I said
Ouch.
it. Woo! It's getting hot in here. But it's true. I mean, so in the States, most predominantly white congregations would never hire an African American as their pastor. I think it's something I even wrote to like our chairman of the board. I wrote to Petra one day.
Yeah.
And I said, well, as part of the problem is that maybe it's because I'm black. And she's like, really? I'm like, I have to consider it because it is a reality. It is because even here in Sweden, a predominantly white congregation would probably not ever choose anyone who's black to be their pastor or their priest.
But I think in our church cross culture, I don't think that we all are so naive. We are so naive. I don't think that we ever thought about, it's because he's black. Because he's black, this.
It is.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Our church is not like that.
No. I'm like, what are you talking about?
But it did cross my mind. And a couple of times where I think there's been sometimes tension between me and the board and stuff like that. It comes up because it's such a part of my life.
Your identity.
It's like I can never get to a place where it's okay to be me because it's always something. Even when I visited Africa, this is the weirdest thing is that I stuck out. Like I could have been
why wouldn't you stick out?
Because I'm not African. Because I was born in the West.
Yeah, but I
That's
mean,
so
like,
Western.
why wouldn't you stick out? That's my point.
Because,
Like,
well, because I felt like
it's
I
not
felt like-
only Africanness. It's not
Yes.
just about your skin
It's about
color.
the skin color, sister.
No, it's
About the
not.
chocolateness.
No, but that's, I mean, you have to remember that, like I've never been in anything where black people are a majority. So even in the States, black people aren't that many if you look at the total population. And so to go to Africa, to this place where everybody's black. I mean, everybody. You look around
Yeah,
the
yeah.
corner, the police are black, the doctors are black.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, wow, look at that.
They have really good diversity work here.
Is that what it looks like when everybody's black? Okay. And so I just thought that I could like slip in, but
Be who you are.
but
Find yourself.
my friend Mo, he was telling me, he's like, because I was there with my youth choir, and so then some of the kids, they said, well, but Ed, he fits in, he could slip. Mo's like,
No.
he sticks
No.
out just like you guys do. They're like, what? The way his body looks, because it's true. I don't have that. I haven't had to do a lot of physical work, and they have like these long muscles, and we have like round muscles.
Short, fat.
And so he's like, the way I walk, the way I talk, the way I
Yeah,
dress.
yeah.
Like, I mean, it's all these different signals.
Yeah, I
and
told
everything.
you. It's
And that was a surprise for me because I didn't expect that. I was expecting that now that I'm in Africa, the motherland, I'm gonna feel this like gigantic connection, and they're gonna feel this connection to me, and it'll be like family members. Yeah,
brother, you come home.
yeah, exactly. It's like Joseph and his brothers all be like crying, like, "Oh, welcome back to the family."
No, I'm just saying no.
Nope, didn't happen that way. But one of the most beautiful things that happened was that I went to the village where Kunta Kinte came from.
Who?
So Kunta Kinte, if you read the book or seen the movie Roots, that's about a guy named Alex Haley, and there was a African member of his family, and that's the only thing they knew, his name and where he came from, and he was able to research and find out where his roots. One of the few black people in America who found out actually where his roots in Africa were.
Wow.
And so I went to the village to visit Kunta Kinte's village, and the village elder, because everyone else is white except for me. So,
He asked you,
Sweden.
do you know where you come from?
And then, and so she asked me where I come from, and I said America. And so she took my hand, kissed my hand, gave me a blessing, and says, "Welcome home." Oh my God! Did I cry? Woo, man. And then we sang in this song in Swedish. So the kids, they sing really well, and it's a song called "Rest Your Tired Feet." So vila dina trötta fötter, and it's in 4-part harmony.
Ooh.
And so we sang this
Advanced.
song, and she was crying, and we were crying, and I was crying. Oh my God!
So much crying.
So, and that was really funny. And then one of the guys, Muhammad, he's like, "Okay, you don't have an African family or tribe or anything, but you can be part of my family. So I'll be your little brother, and we'll adopt you." And I was like, "Oh my God!
Finally, you get your adoption.
African family. It almost made me complete. Now I just have to have my Chinese family." No. Those of you who know me know why that joke is funny. But anyway.
Ed really wants to go home to Jesus, to be in the kingdom, to meet all of his multicultural family.
It would be, it's like a rainbow. You know? But I think that, but it was interesting both to be connected to something, because we're the only group of people in this whole wide world who are not connected traditionally through time to another group. So like your parents came from Vietnam, and you probably know like what village your parents came from. And
Definitely from the same.
they came from the same village.
Yep.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that's
So-
concerning.
So you can actually
Only if they're brother sister.
that might explain something about you.
They're not brother and sister, but at some point they have been
Somebody,
relatives. At some point.
Yeah, and so but like having that connection to your past and knowing what it is,
Yeah.
you can explore that whenever you want. But for me, I'll never know
Where exactly?
or what groups of people made me. And so we're the only group of people in the whole wide world who can't trace their ancestry.
Really?
Yeah. It's only
What about other
African-Americans.
people What about other people who have been like? Oh, stop it! Who have been abducted or moved against their will.
But they still, like, even if, so if we're looking at, so like you have Kurds here in Sweden, and it hasn't been a country called Kurdistan for a long time. But
even though they still talk about Kurdistan.
They still talk about Kurdistan.
Yeah.
But they can still trace their, even though some of them live all over the world, they can actually trace their ancestry back to the villages and the place where they come from. So we're kind of the only people because most people, when they've been transported, no one's refused them to speak their language and to keep their culture. So look at Jewish people. Jewish people have been moved all around the world, kicked out of tons of countries all the time, and yet still
they kept their traditions.
They can keep their traditions. They know it comes back to this thing or something because no one's ever taken the story away from them. And during slavery and colonialism, that was actually a part of the plan, was to
eradicate that.
To clip that connection with the past, because that's the only way that you can enslave people, is to take away their history. Because without that sense of history, like if you knew that you came from a person who was a king or something, it's going to give you a sense of pride. Or you came from a nation that had, there's an empire in the central part of Africa, which is one of the largest empires in the world. But because we don't talk about African history or anything like that, people don't know about it. But say you came from that and you knew that story, and someone's trying to tell you you're a slave, you're nothing, I own you, but you have the story in your head.
And you know that you are...
You can fight against the negativity and the negative image they're trying to give you. But once they separate that from you...
And then they feed you with, you're a slave, and your father was a slave, and
it becomes an identity. And what happens is that the oppressor forms your identity. So your identity is an oppressed identity without the ability to regain that identity that was lost. And so that's I think that's the underlying thing. Like with Black Lives Matters, like during the campaign, the question of reparation came up, and that's because in the United States, when slavery was over, they had promised that every single slave would get 40 acres of land and a mule, so they would be able to take care of themselves. Never happened.
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't hear that in history class.
No, exactly. And so what we're saying is that because the Japanese citizens in America who were put into concentration camps received some kind of remuneration.
Yeah.
It came really late. Their parents were already dead, but at least the children or the grandchildren were able to receive something. And we're like,
what about us?
This country is built on slavery. It's built on forced slave labor in generations, 450 years of slavery.
That's a lot of generations.
How is it that we can't have something that just acknowledges the fact of the sacrifice that was made by our ancestors?
Because I don't think it's about the material things. It's just about the respecting and the acknowledgement that, this was shitty.
Exactly.
Sorry, the language, but it is.
It's like working in the Church of Sweden, who won't even acknowledge their own part in the slave thing, and won't even. And when I bring it up to the bishops, they're all looking at me like, "But we've hired you." I'm like, I am not your Christian. I'm not your poster boy. I'm not. And they're like, "Why are you so upset?"
Exactly. It's going well for you.
And that's why people sometimes react, out of an extreme passion that the peaceful way doesn't always seem to work, because it's not achieving anything. It's not achieving change. But anyway, I'm not saying that you should riot or anything, because I don't believe in violence, but I can feel that frustration.
You can understand it.
Like I sometimes I feel angry. I feel like I can go to the altar inside of the church, turn it upside down and say, "Remember Jesus?
He flipped the tables."
Where's that acknowledgement, Church of Sweden and the Swedish crown? King Gustav, don't think you can get away with this. And so I think that's one of the things is that when we started talking about this, we were talking about things like about Black Lives Matters and in my own reflection, because my life is so multicultural and so different, and it's easy to sit back and look at everyone else, but their story is my story.
Yeah.
Whether it's police harassment in the States, where I've been accused of stealing something from a person who was 20 shades darker than I am and came to my shoulders. Like, he was short and really black. And I was like, and I shop at this store every day. It's across the street from where I live.
Yeah.
I'm like, why would I rob the store? I'm here every day.
I live here, basically.
So the clerk came out of the store and said, "It's him." And then when they finally caught the real person,
Yeah.
and I went back to the store, we're really sorry. We don't even look alike.
Yeah. How
not
can you be
like-
confusing me with them?
And just, or whether it's here in Sweden. When I first started working in the Church of Sweden, I was surrounded by 6 Uppsala police who
Why?
held me for 45 minutes. I was eating breakfast in McDonald's.
Why would the
And
police
after
stop
eating
you?
breakfast in McDonald's, the police, they had called other police, and they came out and they surrounded me.
Why?
And they're
What'd you
like,
do?
And they're like, oh, we can't talk to him. I'm like, because that's the thing, is that I think being African American and having the relationship with the police, which is always good, that I've had, makes me automatically tense. And when I'm surrounded by 6 police, they all got guns and weapons. That's not a fair fight. I'm like, okay, it's time to die. If I'm going to die, I'm going to take one
But that
with
was
me.
in Sweden.
And they held me for 45 minutes.
But that's really strange. It's in Sweden.
Yeah, you know what they said?
What?
Look at your hair. Because I had long dreads back then when I first got ordained as a priest. They said, look at your hair and the way you're dressed. That was their reason for holding me for 45 minutes.
Oh, please. That's such a
And then when I went to work,
BS.
And told people about it, some people tried to justify that.
Like, yeah, of course, you're drugs.
Like,
What did you expect?
They're like, oh, well, no, I don't think they were racist. Oh, really? Really? Because how many times did the police stop somebody because you got blonde hair?
No, the problem was they had dreads.
Yeah, well, don't know anyone else like that. Okay, no, but even when I was did my internship to become a priest, this woman came up to me and said, so you're going to become a priest in the Church of Sweden? I'm like, yes. She's like, but look at you. Like, what do you mean? She's like, you're black.
Okay, God doesn't love black people or what?
I'm like, what? She's like, look, the way you sound like an immigrant. She was, why?
You
should
are an
become a
immigrant, yeah.
priest
So-
in the Church of Sweden. And I was really upset. And I'm like, well, you know what? The bishop has approved me. I've done the studies here. I've gone through the acceptance board. So it really isn't my decision.
It's really not up to you, I would say. It's not up to you
If you have
to
a
say
problem,
that.
you should contact the bishop.
Yeah.
And then I went to my supervisor and told my supervisor about it. And my supervisor just said, well, there are a lot of racist people in Sweden and up here in the north and stuff like that. And you just have to, accept that.
Just accept that there are racist
And if I
people.
was a girl and some guy says, I don't want to receive communion from you're a girl, you'd have like the army out here. But because it's a black person, I'm supposed to just accept that. And that's the whole story in
weird.
Sweden has been every time that something racist comes up, I'm supposed to just accept it.
Yeah.
I'm never supposed to get upset. I'm never supposed to do anything about it. And so that's why when we're thinking about what's happening in the States, but that happens here too in Sweden. And there's a connection between these two countries that
Well, you have white people and you have black people.
maybe you all hate me. Just tell the truth. No.
I think we have to cut this one.
Yeah.
And
I think we maybe
make
bring it up
another
again.
make another episode on Black Lives Matter, because I mean this issue is so broad,
Yeah.
and it's nothing we can cover in like 20 to 30 minutes. So I think you guys should stay tuned and see or listen to our part 2 Black Lives Matter.
Yeah. And if you have questions, please, you can ask questions. And if you feel that my joking around about a serious matter is a lack of respect or insensitive, go ahead and say that, But you have to remember that.
You have to remember he's black.
Talking to a person who has to live through this and have to find a way to find the balance. Because I'm not going to go out and punch somebody in the nose, even though I may feel like it sometimes. So,
Your mother raised you well.
whoa, my mother raised me with the fear of God. That's Jacqueline, if you're out there, I love you. All right, man. But don't feel like, and if you don't be afraid to write to us. We can handle whatever. So,
Give us your criticism or your praise or your own story.
yes,
If you are a black person living in Sweden, or even if you're a black person living in the US, and maybe you want to share your story or you want to share your thoughts on what we have talked about here,
there you go.
and what Ed has gone through here in Sweden.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening to us on Fika for
For
Life.
life. Thank you for listening. If you have any comments or ideas, please send us a message to fikaforlife@mail.com. Fika, F-I-K-A. This was the Fika for Life podcast with Lin Nguyen and Edward Thomas, and we hope to hear you again.